Hi, everyone. Good morning. Let me grab my clicker. So today we've heard a lot of common themes, a little bit of doom and gloom. Damien talked about the uncertainties in the world we face. Magdalene gave us some inspiration and a little bit of tough love to tell us about the transition that she's been through. And Mario helped us focus our vision on transforming for user experience. So what I'm going to do today is tie it all together with some highlights and offer some opportunities for the future. But first, a little bit about me. So as Damien mentioned, I lead the digital products and platforms practice here at ISS. We are a team. We have a core curriculum where we teach product thinking and product management skills, which are, in short, valuable skills that help build and shape technology to be useful for people and viable for businesses. Okay. I am from San Francisco. I was trained at Stanford, and I worked in the Silicon Valley in San Francisco in various tech companies and consulting companies since the dot-com boom. So I've kind of grown up alongside the internet in my career and in my life. And I've gotten to work at a lot of interesting companies like the ones you see here. So the thing that's been really interesting is that not only has the technology changed during that time, but the technology practices, the product development practices have evolved tremendously. So my career, I've observed the way a lot of these methodologies have come to light, and I am really interested in how we can continue to evolve them. That's why I'm here. So in 2017, I got a call from Red Mart, which is Singapore's homegrown grocery startup. I had never heard of it, but I decided to take a great leap across the Pacific Ocean and come here and be their head of design. And it was the best job ever. Shortly after, Red Mart merged into Lazada and joined the Alibaba family. And since then, I've had several years of wonderful opportunities to get to know the tech scenes across Asia, Southeast Asia, India, China. It's been a really interesting and fruitful experience for me. So, given that I've spent the last few years here, it's been, we've all been together in these uncertain times. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on. So, may you live in interesting times. Have you heard this phrase? I really like this phrase. I've always enjoyed it because it sounds like a blessing, but it's really a curse, right? And as a Chinese American kid, I grew up hearing of this referred to as the Chinese curse. So, of course, I was curious. Is it Chinese and what is it, right? I looked into it. It turns out, I think the origins of this phrase can only be dated back to 19th century England. So I think this blessing and curse is about as Chinese as the cookie that it's on, okay? But it's actually quite descriptive for the times that we're in. For better or for worse, we live in very interesting times. Technology is accelerating. You can think over the course of just the last decade, think about how the way you interact with the world has changed with internet, mobile phones, social media, and all of the data that's out there, right? Because customer expectations are evolving and it's kind of requiring us all to rethink. We're more connected than ever around the world as we have ever been, and that's adding complexity to everything. And then, of course, recently we've learned that some seemingly previously distant factors like public health, like climate, like geopolitical complexity, all of those actually do impact our daily lives over here in Little Red Dot, right? So in general, as a people, as enterprises, as public and private organizations, we need to adapt in order to keep up with this changing world. In short, we need to transform. So at ISS, we talk quite a bit about digital transformation. We talk about it with our learners in class. We talk about with our partner organizations. We even discuss it internally around how we ourselves can transform. Digital transformation is a little bit of a buzzword, right? But we've talked quite a bit about it today. The funny thing about it is that, there is no formula. We don't teach you a formula. There's no checklist you can follow, right? In fact, the way we talk about transformation, it sometimes sounds like we're embarking on some grand adventure into the unknown wilderness in search of new horizons, right? There's a lot of words that we use that sound like journey-like. So effectively, the challenge with digital transformation is that every journey is unique. There's a lot of complexity involved, right? As we discussed, there's a lot of changes in process and adding technology, and it's a lot more than just building tech or using tech, right? As everyone else today has spoken. But ultimately, it's about, we have to chart our own paths, right? We can follow the wisdom and the inspiration that we hear from people who have done this before us. We can follow the stories and the tips from Magdalene and other speakers. But ultimately, all of us are going to have to do this ourselves. So at ISS, we are educators. We can help, right? We can pass on a mindset. We can pass on some skills. We can consult and support along the journey. So today I'll give you a few highlights and some ideas. So the first thing to think about is, even though we're talking about this unknown exploration, this is not a lonely hike into the isolation wilderness, right? Transformation is a collective journey. First and foremost, your employees, your team, your staff, they're the most impacted by this because everything about what they do is changing and they have to put in effort to make it happen, right? This is the stories that we hear around the challenges of actually driving change, right? Second, your customers are going to change the way they interact with you. And as Mario has guided us, hopefully you should be actually planning this transformation to improve the way your customers interact with you, right? You should be doing this on their behalf, but it's still change, right? And lastly, there are a whole lot of other stakeholders involved. You have suppliers, vendors, partners, regulators, whoever else you're interacting with. All of these changes impact the way that you do business with them. So as with any collective endeavor, leadership is critical. So I'll offer some guiding principles for how to lead well, or what to keep in mind in this leadership. Commitment is critical, and commitment goes from top down so that you can build commitment from the bottom up. Okay. Communication, I think none of us are ever communicating enough. There always can be more and better communication. And coordination. Mario talked about the way that product teams can be more nimble independently. There's still some coordination between them, but there are ways that we can organize ourselves to keep in touch and make sure that everybody's aligned and working together. So what do you do once you've got that? You have to start with a strong vision. The most important thing is to make sure that it's very clear what you're trying to achieve. And just as important, why? Having a clearly articulated rationale is going to help everybody around you understand what's in it for them. What's in it for your team, what's in it for your customers, what's in it for your stakeholders, so that they know what they're going to get out of it and what they're getting into. This vision is meant to be inspiring, but it also isn't just something that you print on a t-shirt, right? It needs to be something that you use. A vision is for guiding decisions, it's for aligning priorities, and once again, it's for motivating your team. Once you have a vision, I've heard said that a goal without a plan is just a wish, okay? So we have to connect the dots. We have to find a way to figure out how we're going to get there. Strategy is basically a guideline for getting there, and it contains 3 parts. Where are we now? This is about understanding the landscape, understanding your market, your competitors, the technology trends, everything that's happening today that requires you to move forward. Where are we going, and how will we know when we get there? That's actually very critical. Knowing where you want to be and being able to define what success looks like for both your customers and for your business is going to help guide the path. And finally, how are we going to get there? That's the tricky part. Okay. So digital transformation is complex, right? We've already discussed how complex it is. So nobody can really see the end. They don't know exactly what it is. But the question is, how are we going to plan? So this is a story that was told on Quora. Quora is a platform for asking and answering questions. I think it's a pretty great analogy. So the question that was asked roughly, quite accusingly, was saying, how come when engineers estimate their time, they're always wrong? Right? That's basically the question. So there's an engineer named Michael Wolff who wrote a very long reply. Really, really good, and it has stood the test of time. So here's his analogy. Let's say he wants to walk from my home city of San Francisco to Los Angeles. He calculates on the map that it's about 400 miles, which is, let's say, 640 kilometers. He estimates that he walks about 4 miles per hour. So, okay, he'll walk 10 miles a day. He'll be there in 10 days. Okay? He calls up his friends in LA and says, hey, let's have a celebrity dinner when I arrive. They schedule dinner for the moment he estimates to arrive. You know how this is going to go, right? So he starts walking, and he realizes, oh, wow, the coast is kind of curvy. The road doesn't go straight. So he's wandering around, and it turns out it's going to be about 500 miles, not 400 miles. Oops. Okay? He comes to a cliff and realizes, I'm going to have to find a bridge. So he walks inland for a while, and then he comes back. Right? He gets blisters, his shoes fall apart. He is way behind schedule. Okay? And this whole time he's thinking, should I call my friends and postpone my dinner again? Or maybe I can walk more tomorrow. What if I had a 20-hour day? Right? And I can catch up. But guess what? He's really, really tired. Right? So this, of course, takes this journey analogy quite far, but it's very familiar. This sounds a lot like the projects of my early career. We used to call them death marches, where we would have a deadline and we would just work. And we would just work. And sometimes we wouldn't sleep and we would just get it done. And you know what suffered? The quality of the product and our health. Thankfully, I was a lot younger. So, how? Well, Michael's story is basically an ode to agile development, right? We take it step by step. What we do is we break down the problem and we choose our first problem. You can see this structure basically looks like our strategy structure, right? Where are we now and where are we going first? And how are we going to get there? But because it's a small chunk, it's much more predictable. So you state your problem, you state your expected outcome in a measurable way, and then you get the best solution to get there. Just so your first step. And how do you define best solution? We can decide how you want to define best solution. It might be the quickest and dirtiest way to get there. It might be the first test of the technology we want. Whatever it is, it's something, right? Once you get to your first solution, you reflect. How did we do? How did it go? And did we achieve the outcome? Okay. This is where measurement and data comes in, right? Everything has to be set. You have to be planned in a very deliberate way to know what it means to be successful. If you didn't achieve your outcome, okay, maybe you need to come up with a better solution, right, for your problem. Or maybe you need to revisit your problem. One of the things I want to point out, though, is that defining the problem is really important. You have to do the first 2 steps before you get to the solution. I often hear from people who have ideas or features. It's basically a solution that hasn't really been fully thought through. If you can step back and think more deeply about your problem, you're likely to find a better way to solve it. Okay, and that's, to me, one of the most critical skills in general in life. So let's say you did meet your outcome. Now, guess what? You have the next problem to solve. Okay? And this is something you just do over and over. This is what Agile is about. It's not just about Agile development, but this is like life, agilely, right? What I want to point out is sometimes when we talk about Agile, maybe not we, but sometimes I hear talk about Agile, somebody has envisioned their 400-mile journey, and they've broken it up into steps. They've already envisioned it, and then they're just going to deliver. Their plan is to deliver on those steps in sequence. The difference with this approach is that we don't actually necessarily know what the steps will be. The point about this approach is that at every step, we measure and reevaluate the next step. So this sounds a little bit uncertain because it's unpredictable, right? But what happens is you're actually saving a lot of effort and wasted time. Because if you chose the wrong problem, you chose the wrong solution, and you go too far down the path, you have to start over. We used to joke, one of my previous same company with the death marches, we used to say there's never enough time to do it right, but there's always enough time to do it over. And by the way, that's extra painful. So we want to avoid that, okay? So once you've gone through this cycle a few times, you realize that you get a little bit of a habit where you know how to look for the next problem, right? And you're always finding new problems. And this is really the root of what we would call product thinking, this idea that there is no end, there is no done, because you're always just trying to choose the next best problem. And effectively, you're balancing your problems with the opportunities they bring, the outcomes they'll bring, and the resources that you have at hand. Okay. So let's talk about resources. Now that you've got your vision, your strategy, and your approach to gradually moving forward, you still have to execute. And execution requires expertise. And there's a lot of different expertise involved, right? Even just talking about technical skills, if you think about all of the skills that you might hear about later today and tomorrow and the next day in the Learning Festival, there are a lot of technical skills, and they are constantly changing and constantly evolving. So when you're trying to embark on this journey, you have to choose what you're going to do. The thing that's a little bit complex about the situation is that as consumers, our expectations of technology have raised. So I expect things to be smoother. I expect to be able to have everything accessed on my mobile phone. I expect that any product on earth, I should be able to order it online when I feel like it. It should be delivered to me for free, like in an instant, right? I know that might not happen, but you think about any individual organization, let's say a mom and pop grocery store, how are they going to do that? They don't have the skills or the manpower to do that. It's quite difficult, right? So when you talk about expertise, what I would suggest is that you figure out what is the most valuable expertise for your business. Magdalene talked about this a little bit too, right? Think about what is the technology or what is the skill set that is going to be the most valuable for your business, and you invest in that. And then you choose your solutions to be the ones that you can achieve with that, right? And then in an agile way, you can gradually evolve your expertise and your solutions, right? The wonderful thing, especially about the last 2 years, sorry to use the word wonderful in reference to the last 2 years, but wonderful thing about technology is that out of necessity, a lot of technologies and platforms have developed to help enable others to make this change. So for example, a mom and pop shop doesn't have to build a logistical system, doesn't have to do their own inventory. They can actually use tools or join one of the many e-commerce platforms out there, right? And of course, in all of these situations, this cross-functional collaboration and having strong leadership support is going to help you through. So the final major theme I will share with you today is this growth mindset. We've already talked quite a bit about agility. I think of growth mindset as a little bit broader than agility, but the idea of constantly deciding what you want to do, making good decisions based on the data that you have, the knowledge you have, and figuring out your next step, and having that in perpetuity, right? This journey doesn't necessarily have an end anymore. It's now more about a lifetime, not a lifetime, but a long-term process of growth and improvement. This reminds me of a moment in my career that was particularly tumultuous. It was early in my leadership journey where everything around me was changing. We were having layoffs, my boss left, big projects got canceled right at the last minute. Priorities were shifting. And I kept telling myself, I'm just going to wait for things to settle down. And after about the 10th time I heard in my head my own voice saying, I'm going to wait for things to settle down, I thought, maybe I need to learn to make progress while everything is unsettled, because I don't think it's going to settle down. And for me, that was a big mindset shift. And I really had to learn to carve out which are the things that I can do and what are the problems I need to solve, even if things are not settled. That for me was the first step in my growth mindset in my career. So this is a summary, right, of some of the things that we've talked about, key factors that will help you drive your change. And again, because transformation is an extra difficult change, it really requires commitment, communication, and coordination. At ISS, we are all about supporting in your lifelong learning. So if you want a little bit of a preview during these few days, this is a snapshot of some of the skills that we do teach that support these individual factors. It's certainly not a complete list. It's a good start. Okay. So now that we've gained insight into how to set a vision, how to plan a strategy and plan gradually, and how to be agile about our iterative planning, how can we shift our focus from reacting to change to being proactive about envisioning our future? So first, technology, right? New technology is changing every day. To be honest, this slide could have been all about robot dogs and self-driving satay carts and crypto everything and the multiverse, because there's a lot of really interesting technology out there today. And we can spend a lot of time talking about all the cool, fun new things. But because I believe in having, I believe in having solutions that are targeted at solving a problem and not just solutions for themselves, I wanted to reframe this question. So to me, the value of new technology, or any technology, is to bring you more options to choose from when you're choosing solutions for your problems. Okay, so these are just a few of the ways that we can solve our problems better. So for example, we can solve our problems more quickly. We can do them with fewer errors. And we can do them in a way that's less tedious for ourselves. And ultimately, the goal is to differentiate, right? We can scale. The next opportunity is to make use of our evolving best practices to drive better, to solve our problems in a better way, to drive better outcomes. So we've talked about a few different methodologies and a few different mindsets that we think about: user-centered, data-driven, agile, and product thinking. All of these in concert are about focusing our effort to make better things, right? To solve our problems in a better way. And in so doing, if we do them well, we'll create better experiences as well. Mario talked about this quite a bit. I think one of the challenges with the current scene is that there's just so much new technology, there's so much new complexity. And ironically, it's actually very difficult to make things simple. But sometimes the best experience is the one that you don't notice at all. So what I would do is I would challenge you all to put in the time and the planning and the thought and the effort to try to make your experiences seamless. And in doing that, we will drive our business outcomes better, and we'll actually make our lives a little bit smoother as well. Finally, we have an opportunity to choose the problems that we work on. This is a list of 17 sustainable development goals that was developed by the World Economic Forum. These are really meaty. They call them wicked problems. These are really big problems that are real and facing the world today. Can we take our skills and our expertise, and can we apply them to solving these problems, to making the world a better place, and to making our work more meaningful? That's my challenge to you. Now that we know that transformation is going to be a lifelong and iterative journey, what problems will we solve next?